is when I is being raised to a power, we can instantly find out what that is going to end up being. So first off, I to the first power is equal to the square root of negative 1. Okay. I to the second power is equal to negative 1, which we talked about that on that very first slide. Well, if I took I to the third power, that's the square root of negative 1 times times negative 1. So that's really the negative square root of negative 1, which is the same thing as negative I. So the I cubed is the same thing as negative I. And then I to the fourth power is really I squared times itself. I squared times I squared, which is negative 1 times negative 1, which is a positive 1. And then if we were to start the process over, so I to the fifth power would be I to the fourth, which is 1, times I to the first, which is the square root of negative 1. So we'd be back at negative 1. And this entire process would start all over again. So you have 4 options here. When I to the first power is the square root of negative 1, which is just the same thing as I. We've got I squared, which equals negative 1. I cubed, which equals negative I, and I to the fourth, which equals 1. Other than that, those are the only 4 options for I raised to any power. So the way that you figure out what I raised to a power is equal to is we've got 4 options. So you're going to take your power, which here my power is 12, and you're going to divide it by 4 since we have 4 options. So we're going to divide it. So 4 goes into 12 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12. Subtract, we get 0. This remainder of 0 is what tells us everything. I don't really care about the 3. I care all about the remainder. When your remainder is 1, it's I. When your remainder is 2, it's negative 1. When your remainder is 3, it's negative I. And then if you have no remainder, it's positive 1. So I to the 12th power is equal to 1. So if I'm finding I to the 45th power, I'm going to take 45 and I'm going to divide it by 4. So 4 goes into 4 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. Subtract 0. Bring down. 4 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. Subtract 1. I have nothing else to bring down, so 1 is my remainder, which means I to the 45th power is equal to I, because I have a remainder of 1, so I'm going to come up here, and so it's equal to I. I highly recommend you write out these 4 scenarios and write out what the remainders are whenever you're going through these. So here I'm going to rewrite it again. So if it's a remainder of 1, that equals I. A remainder of 2 is equal to negative 1. A remainder of 3 equals negative I. And a remainder of 4 equals positive 1. So I to the 20th, I divide 20 by 4. 4 goes into 25 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract. We have no remainder, which means I to the 20th equals positive 1. Okay, I'm going to work out I to the 35th power, so I'm going to do 35, divide it by 4. 4 goes into 35 8 times, and 8 times 4 is 32. We subtract, I get 3. My remainder is 3. I care nothing about the 8. My remainder is 3, which means I to the 35th power equals negative I. And my last example here, I to the 31st power, I'm going to do 31, divide it by 4. So 4 goes into 31 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. and I subtract, and I get 3. I don't care about the 7. All I care about is this 3. A remainder of 3 tells me that I to the 31st power is equal to negative I. And that is it for our complex number section.